Hi, I'm Pam Bailey. I'm host of Voices Unlocked, the podcast produced by More Than Our Crimes, so that we can bring the voices of people behind bars in federal prison out to you so you know their humanity and you can see the need for reform. And with me as host today is Terrell T. Peters, who was just released from prison in December after 23 years, 8 months, and 3 weeks. I think it's important there because you really keep that exact count as you're counting your countdown to freedom. The focus of the show today was inspired by a book I recently read called The Why Cafe. Silly name for a book. And in a way, the book is a little bit predictable and simplistic, but there was something really important about it that got me to thinking. And the central theme of the book is it asks you to ask yourself the question, why are you here? And by here, they don't mean like in a studio or in a Starbucks coffee shop or in prison. It's more like, why do you exist? Why are you on Earth? And I wonder how many of you could answer that question. And it got me thinking about that too. Basically, the question is, what's your purpose? And as I answered that for myself, I started thinking about, wow, what about people in prison? Especially people who may not see the light at the end of the tunnel. What if they have life without parole? Or what if they just have, people from D.C. have these indeterminate sentences sometimes, 30 years to life, like my co-founder. When you first go in or you're in the middle, that's a long time. Your end date doesn't seem realistic. So how do you, I think it might be easy to say that there is no purpose in prison. So that question doesn't apply to you. And we sort of want to challenge that today. That the premise of the book is a little bit, no matter where you are, if you know what your purpose is, or you want what you want your purpose to be, you can find a way, wherever you are, to bring that to existence, to breathe life into it. So we're going to be talking about that. In the first interview with Rob Barton, my co-founder, More Than Our Crimes, as I'll tell you more about him in a little bit, but you're going to hear him use the word bid, people who are doing their bid in prison. So that's probably a term you haven't really heard before and you won't understand. T, why don't you just talk a little bit about what that term means and sort of like the nuances around it?
Okay. Well, basically, when we use that term, it means that you're doing your time and you have two different mindsets in doing your time. You have a mindset of just accepting what's your fate in prison, or you actually do something constructive with your bid. So bidding just means just doing your time, or in a constructive way or destructive way.
Yeah, so that's what we'll be talking about today is that all the different ways people find to do their bid, to somehow make the time go by. And some people do it more productively than others. So the first interview was with my co-founder, as I said. His name is Rob Barton. He has been in prison since 2 months past his 16th birthday. He's 45 now. And if you've watched our podcast before, you've seen him several times or heard from him several times. He's currently at the high security prison in Coleman, Florida. And he's going to talk a little bit about the different ways people do their bids.
Basically, what happens is, in order to do time, you got to bid. But people bid through fighting their case. So you got people that go to the law library all the time, and that gives them hope that they're going to go home. And then some people just like starting away their time. Some people just gambling every day, watching sports. Some people working out. Some people selling drugs. Some people getting high. Like whatever they do to get through their bid, and they do this consistently, day after day, week after week, year after year. You start putting the games together, and years start going by. And in the process, I would do whatever else I was doing to bid to get through the days.
So one point I want to make. So Rob was talking about all those a variety of ways he's seen people bid that may not sound very positive to other people. Gambling, doing drugs, selling drugs, watching sports all day. But it's really important to understand. I mean, try to imagine for a minute if you are spending years upon years upon years locked away behind walls, pretty much invisible to the rest of the world. And it seems like it's going to go on that way forever. You have to find some way to pass the time. The outside world sort of recedes. It's not real anymore. What's real is what's inside. So a whole nother society, a whole other economy emerges, you know. And so people, for instance, sell drugs to make money. You know, they have to pay for, I mean, we've talked in other episodes of how bad the prison food is. So, you know, they do whatever they need to do to pass the time and to live somewhat comfortably.
And
So, you know,
say something about that?
sure.
Oh yeah, when you just says people do sell drugs to like just to make money. Sometimes that's the only way they can see to survive. So even though I'm not saying that selling drugs is right, but that might be the only thing that they know at the moment. So
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, a lot of these individuals maybe came off the streets. And prison doesn't offer alternatives. It used to be the prison jobs were very available. That's not true anymore. And if you don't have family supporting you, so you know, Rob often makes the point that when you're in the mansion, you live like you do in a mansion. But when you're in the woods, you follow the lifestyle of the woods.
exactly.
Well, Rob, however, had the opportunity that not everybody has. He was going through some court hearings, so he was brought back to D.C. from Florida, and he stayed in the D.C. jail for over a year. And he had the opportunity to participate in an inside-outside university program put on by Georgetown University, and was exposed to a whole other world of. He was finally the outside world became real, and he connected to it again. And that opened up a lot of other options and possibilities for him. But he lost his court hearing. He was hoping to get out. He was sent back to Coleman. But he went back with a renewed sense of possibility and options. So he still needed a purpose very much because he'd been rejected. That's very hard to think that you might be free and then you're not. You have the opportunity taken away from you. So he needed to find a purpose. But this time he had more ideas. So he's going to talk about how More Than Our Crimes, that's when we created More Than Our Crimes, was right when that period when he was in D.C., he'd lost his hearing, he was going to be sent back. And that's when we met and we created More Than Our Crimes, and it became his purpose.
But when I went up to jail and met you and, you know, started being these programs and stuff like that and just like seeing that, where it's like people that really care about us in the world and you can really make an effect from here. And when we established More Than Our Crimes, like that became something that was bigger than me. So like through like hearing people who like ask like, Rob, what do you think about this? Or how can we push this forward? Or can we do this, that, and the third as far as getting laws changed or whatever? It gave me a sense of purpose. And just having people believe in me and call on me like that took me outside of myself and made me think about, well, damn, although I'm in jail, I still can do this. And not only will it help me, but it will help everybody else. So that's kind of like what made me have a bigger purpose than me. It made a difference in the sense that because it means that your life counts. Like what you doing counts. So for, you know, many people that got life without a road or I ain't never going home, it's like, I'm just resisting until I die. And whatever bid I pick up, like what I told you, like selling drugs or getting high or gambling or whatever they do, is I do this until, it's not a conscious thought, but it's like, it helped me get through the day, it helped me through the time. But when you pick up these bigger missions, it's like, but damn, I really can affect the world. I can change something for the people that's here. I can change something for my family members, or maybe I can change the world. And when you start thinking like that, like it gives you power. You feel like you got power, and it gives you a renewed hope. So my self-worth is not tied just into me. It's tied into More Than Our Crimes, what we're doing. It's tied into a bigger cause of helping others.
Wow, what Rob just said in his interview resonated so deep with me because in the earlier parts of my incarceration, I used to run around and gamble, and I drank wine, made wine, just
All against the rules.
did everything against the rules.
Yeah.
And, I didn't have a sense of purpose. I didn't have a sense, and that's because I didn't have a sense of direction. And I was still young at the time. And it just took for me to have to, just like Rob, when he came to DC and he connected with people that seemed like they cared for him. And that in itself invoked hope in him. And at a point in my incarceration when that happened for me, that was in 2014 when I was introduced to a whole different world. And I took a sociology class at West Virginia University. And it was part of a program called the Inside Out Prison Exchange Program. And within that I learned different theories, social theories. One of them being the strain theory. And
What was that?
It's the strain theory basically states that when people in society, the pressures of society, gives people a strain of them not being able to handle what society brings to them. And that happens in prison as well, when prisoners have to go through the strain of just being imprisoned. And those type of theories, like the social bond theory, like the broken glass theory, those type of theories resonated with me because I learned them, but I've also experienced them. And just knowing that, people cared for, me coming in and helping us learn these different theories and was willing to educate us, gave me hope. And that in itself gave me a sense of purpose.
So I guess the theories, sometimes people think of theories as something that's not real, but I guess for you, that gave you an explanation for what
happened
you
to
were.
me.
Yeah.
Exactly what happened to me.
And was that when you were in a medium security prison?
I was in USP Hazleton.
Okay, so that's great to hear, because too many times these really good programming isn't offered to people in the higher security prisons. You have to move down to medium security or lower to get these really good programs. And I've always thought that where they should be offered are to the people who are in the most restrictive settings, because they need something that will help them change.
Yeah. Well, that program, invoked in me, wanted me to be more.
What became your purpose then?
Just to be more, just to, educate people on, they can be more. And my purpose actually became just to dismantle the systems that placed me in prison. Some people might say that, I placed myself in prison because of my act, but it was certain, things, pieces that was put in place that shaped the way how I thought. And eventually I ended up in prison because of how I thought. So, just that system in itself, I just want to help dismantle that system.
So I think your story also shows that as people struggle to find their purpose, they need help, they need the programming, the education. You can't do that on your own very easily sometimes. We need rehabilitation, which we seem to forget in our prisons. Our prisons seem to be more about warehousing these days, so it shows the importance of offering education to me.
And then, like the term you just used, rehabilitation. You can't rehabilitate something that never been habilitated.
Yeah.
So I used to always say that term wasn't effective for what needed to happen to people in prison like myself. And that we had to go through the process of being transformed. And once you go through that process of being transformed, you find a purpose that's bigger than you. And basically, the why, like you just said from the book,
Right.
the why.
Why am I here?
Why am I here? Why am I here?
What can I do? What's my role in life? Everybody
my-
wants that. I think you mentioned one of the books that people have read. You mentioned it, and I've heard it for a number of people in prison. A book that was influential for them was Man's Search for Meaning
Man's Search for Meaning.
by Viktor Frankl.
Viktor Frankl.
And I think that's when we say, why are you here? That's what's behind it. We all want to find meaning. We want meaning to our life. We don't want to feel like this is all there is or inconsequential. So the next interview is with a man named Cordell Miller. He was known in prison as Boogie, so I call him Boogie. He has a pretty amazing story in that he was in for 31 years, one of the longest I've heard, since the age of 17. And in a future episode, we'll talk more about his story because he ended up being deported after 31 years in prison to Jamaica, where he'd been born but didn't grow up. And that's a whole other story where he had to find purpose all over again.
Oh, wow.
But I think he has a wonderful story about how he went through the same search for transformation and how he found it. So in this first segment of his interview, he talks a little bit about the early part of the journey where most people take a while to find their purpose. You mentioned that. When you first come in, you're overwhelmed with just being in prison.
You're trying to figure out how to navigate this new world that you're
Yeah,
in.
and you're still in the same mindset you were in when you're in the streets to some extent.
Yeah.
So it always takes a little while before people evolve. So let's listen to the first part of his journey.
For some people, if you have that mindset like, well, man, I'm not going to get up. I feel as though that I'm going to be here for the rest of my life. You know, you have options. I can either just be a part of, you know, what's going on inside the prison, just start getting high, or just started, you know, being troublesome, just started, you know, do whatever the situation may be, do whatever prison had to offer on a negative perspective. I'm like, nah, that's not me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that I could do more. I can be more to others. I can have a more impactful, you know, presence in somebody's life or whatever. So what I did, I started surrounding myself with the younger brothers, those that were coming in, that didn't have a clue about prison and the mannerism and the, you know, the etiquettes of prison. You know, something that nobody did for me when I first came in at a younger age. You know what I'm saying? 'Cause I was confined since I was 17. Nobody pulled me to the side and took me under the wing and did, you know what I'm saying, showed me anything. I had to learn a lot of things on my own.
And the next soundbite from Boogie, you mentioned that it was the Inside Outside program, the education, the university that helped you find your purpose. For Boogie, he talks about finding Islam. You know, usually, I mean, people can do it on their own to find their purpose and go through the transformation you talked about, but a lot of times they need something to facilitate it. It could be a key book. It could be a program. For him, it was converting to Islam, and that's what gave him, as you'll hear, he's decided that his mission was to help other people. And he ends up deciding he was going to help the young people coming into prison who we just talked about the fact when you first come in, you're lost. You can take a couple of different directions, and sometimes they're very negative. Anyway, so he'll talk about that journey and how he found his purpose.
It didn't start in the beginning. It started towards the end of my confinement. You know, later on in my years when I got older, when I was in my 30s, like about 30 on up, you know. And I think it really began once I became Muslim. I think this is when the perspective began to change. You know, I was no longer, you know, feeling sorry about my situation. I was no longer, you know, beating myself up about, you know, well, I got a life sentence and so on and so forth. And I felt now that my purpose was to, you know, help others as opposed to feeling sorry for myself. I got tired of seeing the younger brothers come in with an extensive, you know, sentence. And what they did was they came straight in to the block met a few guys and went straight to the basketball court. I went straight to the gym, not realizing the gravity of their situation. You know what I'm saying? Because they were young. They were very immature in that regard. No matter how dangerous the setting was, they were so content with being around their so-called homies or people they were familiar with that they haven't seen in a long time. They forgot about their situation at hand. So therefore, I'm like, man, there's more to this. You know what I'm saying? Guys that, were lacking in education, didn't have such a GED, or didn't feel as though they had to do nothing but be with the homies, as they say. That's how you do time. Just hang with your homies. There was so much more to it than that.
Okay, with what Boogie just said about him finding Islam or becoming a Muslim also resonated with me because I did, find Islam in prison as well. And one message that I've got from that is that in order to get 100% change in anything, you have to be 100% dissatisfied in what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was 100% dissatisfied of who I was and what was happening to me. So Islam gave me the foundation of principles that changed the trajectory of where I was going.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a common experience I know shared by a lot of individuals. I don't know how you could survive prison if you didn't have some kind of value system, and also you get community from it, right? You're meeting other people who share that, and it gives you community. Now, in the last soundbite from Boogie, he points out that not everybody finds purpose that is as deep and meaningful as Rob and himself. For some people, I could think of one gentleman, for instance, he discovered he had an artistic skill, and for some people it's painting. And the one I'm thinking of, he crochets.
Mm.
And it was reason why that's a purpose is he makes things for people who he loves or gets to know, and he always does something with each one he crochets in the gift so that when that person gets it, it's unique to that person, and that person will think of him all the time. So, for instance, he's making a big Afghan for me,
Oh,
and
wow.
and he won't tell me yet, but he's woven into it something that is sort of a message to me, and that's his purpose. It's a way of giving happiness to others through a talent that he has. So Boogie talks a little bit about some of the other ways you could find purpose that may not seem like a purpose at first, but are.
I see guys, basically that's it. Basically find something, a talent about themselves that they never knew existed, And time does that. You got to know. I see guys become to write poetry, artistry, music, sports, whatever the situation. I see guys really find themselves in that regard, man. Yeah, man. It takes time. You got to really, really just be patient with yourself. Now you got some guys that's all about dedication and so forth, but you also have guys that realize, like I've seen guys that study the law so much and can't help themselves, but they are able to help others.
Upon returning back into society, I believe that a lot of guys who did long, lengthy sentences, when they do return to society and they have a sense of purpose, I think they continue their sense of purpose. And for some people, you have to reimagine a sense of purpose. But like for the guys that did those long, lengthy sentences, I see that, including myself, that we're continuing, our purpose. We're in the communities. We're doing a lot of stuff, or a lot of the things that, we pledged ourselves on while we were in prison.
Like working with youth, I hear a lot of the people in prison who I talk to, one of the purposes they think that they have is to work with youth to make sure they don't make the mistakes that they did.
And you see that. You see that. So they don't want the youth to end up or have to go through what we went through. And just like myself, for example, I said that my purpose, I wanted to just dismantle,
Dismantle the system,
just throw
the
a
machine.
hammer on it, just slam it, and just mess it up, and just create a new system, and I believe that, I'm continuing that purpose.
Because you work with a nonprofit organization that's very much focused on reform.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's my love at the
Yeah.
moment. So, yeah. So,
And it's what I hope we want more people to see, is that people coming out of prison have gifts they can give to their community. They have an inside knowledge of where the system isn't working and why people, why do kids get involved in crime to begin with? And so we really should see them as assets. And I tell you what, I think all of us, everybody who's watching or listening today, should think about that question too. Why are we here? What is our meaning? And I have to tell you, More Than Our Crimes is a big part, I think, of why I'm here. And it makes me feel good to say that, maybe doesn't bring big bucks, that's for sure. It's hard to start a new organization. But I do feel like I have meaning and I'm contributing something. And it answers that question of why for me. And I would encourage everybody out there to ask that question of yourself. What's your purpose? And please subscribe to the podcast so you will be notified of future episodes, and discuss this over dinner with your friends and family after watching this. Thank you.
thank you.